How many fans can we tick off today? Too many to count. Don't get in my way. A few days ago, we made a video on this YouTube channel talking about the latest on Detroit Red Wings goalie prospect Sebastian Cossa. And our conversation on the channel discussed the idea of him getting traded, as brought up by Frank Seravalli. Now, we have some more to dive into when it comes to Cossa and his situation and what the trade price seems to be. Let's take a look at the tail of the tape here. Sebastian Cossa is 23 years old, 6'6", 209, a left-handed goalie, and he is still yet to play a game in the Grand Rapids Griffins playoff run. That's not to say the Griffins aren't doing well. In fact, they've been winning some games here and there. Yes, they lost against the Chicago Wolves twice already, but their overtime win with Michael Brandstad-Nygaard going out there and getting his goal, absolutely filthy move in OT to get the Griffins on the board. Right now, though, Michael Postava has been the guy in net as the Griffins have advanced to this round. Now, Sebastian Cossa has taken a back seat, and as per Frank Seravalli's report last time, he essentially said that Cossa is going to get moved. It's going to happen. This is all of a sudden the status quo because he has been overtaken. This is not a guy that can afford to be in the AHL longer, and now he's already gotten surpassed. So, let's dive into our latest updates. The Mug NHL posted this earlier in the week. Yesterday, 6 p.m. PST tweet. The asking price for Sebastian Cossa, according to a few sources, including Frank Seravalli, is a second-round pick, or a player that can help the Red Wings right now. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Oh, man, a second-round pick for Sebastian Cossa? That's it? Yeah, honestly, I feel like it seems like a slap in the face, especially when you consider where Cossa was 5 years ago, but this seems to be the inevitability of goaltending prospects who haven't been able to crack the NHL this late into their development at 23 years old. That's not to say that Sebastian Cossa can't go on a Jakub Dobeš-like run next season, a guy who is 24, by the way, and who is already a starter on a playoff team in the Final Four. But when you consider where Sebastian Cossa was drafted, 15th overall back in the 2021 NHL Entry Draft, a guy taken before a noted playoff scorer, Zachary Bolduc, another NHL full-time player in Fyodor Svechkov, and even a starting goaltender for Jesper Wallstedt, it all of a sudden becomes a lot more of a disappointing result when you see that Cossa was taken ahead of all these guys. In particular, the Wallstedt versus Cossa debate of 2021 was one that we called a lot on this YouTube channel. We made a bunch of videos talking about Cossa versus Wallstedt and the fact that Cossa had this crazy WHL year with a .941 save percentage. He only lost 2 games and he had 4 shutouts. He had more shutouts than he had losses that season. It was ridiculous. But it should be said, the WHL was different that year. You had a whole bunch of guys going to the AHL, and you had a bunch of guys not playing because of the COVID-19 that took over the world. So Sebastian Cossa was playing with a difficult hand in that he achieved so much, and he was drafted so high. But there was this element that said, hey, Jesper Wallstedt was highly touted as the top goalie prospect in this draft class for years. Now he gets overtaken by Cossa, who's a taller Canadian kid. How is that going to look in 5 years? Well, Sebastian Cossa isn't even the starter on his AHL team in the playoffs. Meanwhile, Jesper Wallstedt was the main guy in Minnesota as they lost in the second round to Colorado. Second round pick seems like a slap in the face. But if you think about some of the other elements the Red Wings could get, a player that can help them is also something that you could say might actually be useful. This is why you have reports or speculative tweets from people like Carmen Gill, for example. This tweet had 136,000 views. Frank Seravalli says Sebastian Cossa is out in Detroit. The asking price for him is a second or a roster player that can help them out now. Darnell Nurse fits the mold, doesn't he? Oh boy. Oh boy, could we see some sort of a Sebastian Cossa for Darnell Nurse type of trade? Nurse, a guy who's 31 years old, 6'4", 216, a left-handed D-man, signed till the end of 2030, making $9.25 million a year. Oh my goodness, that's a nasty, nasty contract. I'll tell you this right here. Darnell Nurse has a number of deficiencies in his defending ability, especially in 2026. Not only is he not producing points anymore, he had 43 points in 82 games in 22-23, which was considered a good year for him. This previous year, he dipped to 24 points total. But Darnell Nurse is no longer a guy that you can necessarily rely upon to play all the minutes that he did once upon a time. I always go back to this, but when you take a look at that North Division year that we had seen, where the Winnipeg Jets swept Edmonton, Darnell Nurse played half an hour in 2 of these games, and then he played 60 minutes in this overtime loss in game number 4. Didn't get any points in these games, but still, the fact that he was able to play, that's the reason he went out there and earned this $9.25 million contract. The Oilers saw him as a cardio king and a guy who could just eat minutes, and they're like, yep, we want that. Sign him to a $9 million AAV deal. Now, the core 4 is Nurse, Bouchard, McDavid, Draisaitl, taking that title away from the Toronto Maple Leafs with Matthews, Marner, Tavares, and Nylander. Darnell Nurse is by far the worst of that high-paid quartet in Edmonton. But he is a little bit better, I would say, than an Albert Johansson at this point. Now, that might be a hot take. Lego, what are you doing going out there and discrediting the Detroit Red Wings D-core? But let's be real here. Darnell Nurse is capable of playing NHL minutes to a capacity that some of these guys might not be. And if you were to pick your poison and say who's a better fit for a team going into the playoffs, I mean, both Ben Sherratt and Darnell Nurse have a lot of experience playing important games. Darnell Nurse, you could even say he's made the finals twice in a row, just hasn't been able to seal the deal. You can talk about whether or not there is an element of improving the Red Wings' blue line by acquiring a guy like Darnell Nurse. Now, I'm not necessarily arguing and saying that it's going to happen and that it's a good thing, but I can understand why this poster, who happens to be an Oilers fan and who supposedly would want Sebastian Cossa, is saying this. Top Reply says, man, a second-round pick for Cossa is nothing. I would do it. You think people would pay for Darnell Nurse? LMAO, maybe a pick swap and adding your first-round pick. Believe it or not, yes, they will. Not really. I don't think Nurse is going to go over, but a second-round pick, the Oilers have that. So all of a sudden, you do have a number of Oilers fans getting into the Sebastian Cossa discourse. For what it's worth, there are some folks rebuttaling against that. Jake313 Hockey went out there and said that Frank Saravalli is like 0 for 30 when it comes to Red Wings speculation. Also, there is a 0% chance the Wings are trading Cossa for Darnell Nurse. Like, please be serious here. But with that said, this is the trade price, second-round pick, or a player that can help the Wings right now. I'll say this, Sebastian Cossa, he's not really helping the Detroit Red Wings by being a backup in the AHL in their playoff run. Sebastian Cossa, as much future potential as he has, how patient are the Detroit Red Wings willing to be heading into the next few years? We saw how disappointing everything was this season when they barely missed out after having such a stranglehold on the league. Is there an element of desperation that can come into play here when it comes to Stevie Y making moves to improve the team in the short term? Do you think a Sebastian Cossa Darnell Nurse trade makes sense? Let me know in the comments all your opinions about the Cossa trade status as a whole. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.